Three, two, one.
Action.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Episode 32, the podcast Untitled ZX.
Yeah.
I'm Uncle Frank. This is Nick. Nick, how are you? Back in school?
Yeah. Um, I'm not particularly happy about it, but luckily I only have to wake up early 2 days a week, so life's good.
Did you have any classes start yet or not yet?
I had one class at 10 in this morning. That was the only class I had today. Tomorrow I only have one class too, and it's not till 5:30 at night, so
Oh, wow. Okay. How was the class today?
it was mostly syllabus stuff, and I've had this particular professor for like 10 other classes already, so
Yeah.
it's
So you
like
didn't, you
and
knew
he
most of his policies already.
Yeah, most people knew most of his policies already because most people in the class were people he knew already. So he was all like, "Yeah, no, you know me, you know my policies, so we're just gonna speed run this."
Yeah. Why even review them? Just give you the syllabus. Everybody can read it.
Yeah,
Hmm. Any interesting classes this semester or not really?
I'm taking documentary filmmaking, short story writing, digital graphics, which is an online class, and the mandatory senior seminar, which I'm hoping is actually helpful in, getting me an internship for the spring.
Yeah, I
But we'll see,
gotcha.
I suppose.
All right, that sounds pretty good. We missed you this weekend. Though we went to Activate.
I would have gone too, but I didn't want to go to the apartment as early as I did, but the stupid apartment decided, oh, we're actually going to limit the amount of parking passes you can get. Also, we're going to have more people than we have space for. You're going to give us out the parking passes at 9 a.m. on Saturday. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Did you get a parking pass?
Yeah, I woke up at 8:30 in the morning to Nick G banging on my door saying, yo, you want a parking pass? They're lining up now. And I'm like, I was told it wasn't supposed to be till 10. What are you talking about?
Okay, well at least you got it, I guess. So the place was pretty cool though. Activate. It's got all these like rooms with different puzzles and games and electronic games, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I was with mom when Rob suggested it, and mom looked it up, and I was like, ah, damn it, I would have gone if I, wasn't forced to be here against my will. I wouldn't have come back until Sunday if I had a choice, but
Yeah.
so no fun
Well,
for me.
you missed a good time. So
It's fine though, because we made up for it, and I went to the cinema on Sunday instead, as one does.
and last week you had a long one.
Quite. It was me, Jordan, and Don. And last time it was the three of us together was episode 15, which previously held the record for longest episode. That was around an hour and a half
Uh-huh.
or 25 minutes, I think. So
Yep.
I guess it's just kind of when it's specifically the three of us, it's always going to end up being the longest episode currently available. So
Okay. Well, next time you guys get together, yeah, we'll see if we can break the record again.
hey, it was a very productive episode. We spent a good amount of time on the
Yeah.
topics. We only had a couple topics last week,
What
but
was the hot topic?
the movie review actually we barely even focused on. We spent a lot of more time talking about the first episode of Lanterns. Again, Don had a lot of insight on that because he's a big comic guy, so he knows all sorts of like this stuff that it's based on. And
Hmm.
we broke down some of the trailers and teasers shown off at Disney's D23 Expo, including but not limited to a new teaser for Avengers Doomsday, which Don had a grand old time tearing to shreds, and I was like, I wanted to tear it to shreds, but honestly, he knows more about comics than me, so I'm going to let him tear it to shreds. Uh, and the
All right.
and the Ahsoka trailer for the second season, which we have a concrete release date for, premieres January 20th, 2027. Which I tore that trailer to shreds. It does not look great, but it looks better than the first season. The bar is low.
Well, we encourage everybody to go back and listen to episode 31 then. So,
Yeah,
all right. Well, today we got three movie reviews. The Room Returned, La La Land, Coyote, and Acme. So let's jump in.
yeah,
The Room Returns.
Yes, so we were going to do a Lanterns episode review, but I forgot to watch this week's episode because I didn't feel like last night I was watching, well, The Room Returns, and today after class, I was so mentally drained just because I worked myself up about going to talk to my boss for my campus job because he didn't respond to my email about the
Yep.
scheduling. So I went
Yep.
physically to talk to him, and I was all worked up, and it was going to be like so stressful, and I was afraid I was going to like lose the job because I reached out too late and he's like, no, no, you're fine. And I'm like, oh, that was way easier than I thought it would be.
You're
But
like, why was I stressing?
exactly. But then the stress all just came crashing down on me, and I had no motivation to actually watch the show. So
That happens, and I will say many things in life that's the case, where it just turns out to be easier than you realize in your head.
Yeah, and then you just are like mentally drained right afterwards because you've worked yourself up over it and now it's over with, and now you just don't know what to do.
Don't worry, you'll get better at it. You'll stop working yourself up.
Yeah, it's gonna take a while, but yeah, The Room returns.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. We heard about this. This was announced maybe a year or two ago, and it was the strangest announcement because this is a shot for shot, word for word remake of the 2003 film The Room by Tommy Wiseau. And The Room is a cult classic, but it is also widely considered the worst movie ever made. But it's sort of become iconic because of that, because I think it sort of is like the pinnacle of the so bad it's funny movie.
What
Like,
is it even about to start?
so, and again, when I say word for word, they use the exact same screenplay here. It's the same.
Wow.
It's the same screenplay. They use the same cruddy green screen effects. Like it looks atrocious. But the premise here is as sort of there's this guy named Johnny who in the original was played by Tommy Wiseau, who is an incredibly ambitious but severely untalented man. In this one, in the remake, he was played by Better Call Saul star Bob Odenkirk, who is actually significantly more talented, which made his
Hmm.
performance that much funnier.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah, it made it so it made it like egregiously funny because he's like legitimately trying to do a serious dramatic performance because that's sort of the thing. When Tommy Wiseau made the original movie, he marketed it as this like serious dark drama. And then it came out and it was not serious or dramatic at all. It was actually quite goofy and campy. And then retroactively, he tried to like course correct and rewrite history and say, no, no, guys, it was meant to be a dark comedy the entire time. And it's like, all right, Tommy, we know that was totally your intention and not at all you trying to course correct the fact that people didn't take the movie the way you wanted to, but it sort of garnered cult classic status. And this dude, Brando Crawford, who is, I think most of what he does is just shooting live recordings of like stage plays, decided, you know what? I'm going to do a remake of The Room, word for word, shot for shot. And
Did um did you see the original or no?
yes, this is one we usually seek out really bad movies to do watch parties in my Discord server.
Uh-huh.
We did the original as a watch party last year, and it might have been the funniest experience ever.
Hmm.
Although that was particularly funny because Ryan and Nick G both actually were with me when we were watching it while in the Discord voice chat. This time we only had three people watching it, but God, there was one particular gag in this movie, this version of it, that had me dying every time they played it, even though you could see it coming from a mile away after the first time. So in the original movie, there is a gratuitous amount of like overlong sex scenes for there's like eight of them. We started counting when we watched the original. We're like, all right, we're gonna see how long it takes. I made a joke once where when we were watching it, I said, I'm not sure if Tommy Wiseau meant to send this to X videos instead of cans. That was the joke I made. I'm like, I think he
Yeah,
tried
wow.
to send this to X videos and accidentally sent it to cans instead. Um, but the way they approach those sex scenes in this movie is perhaps the funniest thing ever. The first time it popped up, I did not know what they were going to do because the thing with this movie is the original movie is an hour and 40 minutes long. This one is only an hour and 5 minutes,
Oh
despite having
wow.
the exact same screenplay and again, shot for shot. So I found myself thinking, what did they do? When the first sex scene happened, it didn't happen. The screen just went black with text on it, and the text just said sex scene and the two characters' names. And I just
Oh
died.
wow.
I just died laughing. And they just left the screen up for like 20 seconds while playing like obnoxious classical music. And it was so out of left field. It was the funniest bit in the entire movie. It actually reminded me of another low budget, like campy movie that came out a while ago. There was this low budget movie called The Velocipaster that was like a comedic gem because it in premise that one was so incredibly stupid. It was a pastor who gains like superpowers and he can turn into a dinosaur.
So they do this joke 8 times, go to
They
black
did this
screen.
joke every time there was a sex scene, and every
Oh
time
my
I
God.
died laughing. It
That's
wasn't, and
crazy.
the funniest part is like it's one of those bits where it's like you can see it coming from a mile away. Like you can tell when a sex scene's about to come up because they like have a whole like build up to it. Like you can tell it's going to happen every single time, but every time me and a couple of the guys in the server just cracked up every time because it's like, look, there it goes. Here's sex scene number 12, and then the screen cuts to black and it plays the
Oh my God.
obnoxious classical music, and
Yeah,
and everyone just dies laughing.
that's funny.
One thing I will say is Bob Odenkirk is no Tommy Wiseau because unlike Tommy Wiseau, he actually can act.
Yeah. Does that
Um,
help or hurt?
I feel like it both helped and hurt because I think Tommy Wiseau's acting in the original movie was by far the best performance in that original movie, but also the worst. Like it was so over the top dramatic, like he was overacting to a T. But his
Yeah.
line delivery in the original movie has become sort of iconic, and I think part of it's because of his weird accent, but every line he delivered was so cartoonishly over the top that like it's one of the most quotable movies maybe ever made.
Hmm.
And then you've got Bob Odenkirk, who again, I think it offered a different kind of comedy in that he was playing this like ludicrously over the top screenplay as
Hmm.
seriously as possible. Like, and it wasn't even like Tommy Wiseau like overacting. Like, no, he played it dead seriously with like the same subtlety he brought to like Breaking Bad.
I
And
can't even like look, but every time you look at Bob Odenkirk, it does make you laugh. I don't know, just something about him.
he's a pretty goofy guy.
Because even in Breaking Bad, he can be funny.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure when they did Better Call Saul, there was a whole controversy because everyone thought he was just the comic relief character. And
Right.
then people ended up liking his show better than the original because it was just ended up being that good. I think people are still mad he never got an Emmy for Better Call Saul in its 6 season run.
Yeah. And it was green screen most of the time, huh?
Yeah, the original was as well. Like they had no sets. It was all either green or blue screen. But the thing that makes it so funny and so jarring, they use the exact same like still images that they use and stock videos they used in the original movie here. Like
Wow.
from in terms of its visual quality, it looks like something straight out of the 80s. And the original came out in 2003 and also visually looked like something straight out of the 80s. And I'm not talking like a good 80s movie that aged well. I'm talking about one that had like a budget of 12 bucks and a dream
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
aged
this
like,
must have been cheap to make, the whole thing.
yeah, it's the kind of thing that aged like a piece of toast. And it's really, really just kind of fun. I love the commitment to how they do it though. Like the green screen looks as cheap as it did 20 years ago when they did the original movie, and the actors like they don't even try to like blend them in. Like it's not even like you see like big budget green screen movies like the Avengers or like Star Wars
Mm.
prequels where they at least make an attempt to make the characters look like they're in the green in like the
In
environment,
the scene, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but they feel like cardboard cutouts that were stuck on like they feel like the best way that I can describe it is you print out like a picture of a background and then you print out little cutouts of the characters and you tape them on. That is
Yeah,
what it looked like. Like you could see the lines around them because of from the green screen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's I didn't on the notes I normally format with a what did work and what didn't work, but I formatted this a little differently because this is such a hard film to sort of grade and sort of rate because everything it does not work in any way, but that is also exactly why it works as
Mm.
well as it does. To quote J. Robert Oppenheimer, how can it be both? It can't,
Hmm.
but it is. It's paradoxical, and yet it works.
Why do you think they wanted to redo the movie?
I think it's because of that cult status. Like, again, when it came out, it was widely considered to be the worst movie ever made. But because of its sheer absurdity, its sheer ridiculousness, its sheer just the sheer campiness and pulp of that screenplay, it is sort of aged both gracefully and terribly at the
But
same
the thing
time.
about a cult classic, it's very hard to redo them.
Yeah, this I think worked as well as it did because it wasn't trying to be some like huge hit like epic remake of it. Like this was just a bunch of people who thought the original was one of the goofiest things ever, and they
They
absolutely
decided
adored
to
it
refilm it.
and
Yeah.
just wanted to do their own thing with it. And
How is the reception?
honestly, I don't think a lot of people actually saw this one because they didn't widely release it. It was shown at a few like small theaters in like LA and London.
Yeah.
And then they just randomly dropped it direct to video. Like they dropped it on like digital video platforms like Prime Video and Fandango at Home on like a random Wednesday in July.
Yeah.
Like they didn't market it at all. It just kind of they shadow dropped it.
So it almost seems like they just made it for the love of the movie.
Oh yeah, no, this was not like some big money grab. This was for the love of the game.
This Brando Crawford? What else has he done?
He in the notes I've been putting like other things the actors and directors have worked on. We got nothing for him. He's literally like his entire career, like he's not some big director who's got like legitimate things to his work. Most of what he's done is, I looked a bit into his filmography. Most of what he's done are just looks like stage recordings of off-Broadway plays.
Hmm. Okay. Well, it's got an interesting change in direction, I
Yeah.
guess. So,
There
all
were
right.
some fun cameos in the movie too. Some actors who appeared. There's a scene with like some gang like mugger guy who tries to rob one of this guys because he owes him money. And in this version, he was played by the guy who played Mark in the original movie, the co-lead of the original movie,
Huh.
who was like Tommy Wiseau's like romantic rival slash best friend in the movie.
Yeah.
But
20 years older though.
the actor who played Mark in the original played the mugger guy this time. And their weird psychologist friend, which I didn't notice because I didn't know what he looked like until I saw his name in the credits. But their weird psychologist friend was played by Mike Flanagan.
Hmm. I don't know him.
He's a director more than anything. He does a lot of Stephen King adaptations. He did the
Yeah.
Shining sequel, Doctor Sleep. He did
Hmm.
the TV adaptation of the Fall of the House of Usher a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Did a movie called The Life of Chuck last year, which I really, really liked. His next movie is going to be a sort of legacy sequel to. His next movie is going to be a new movie from I think The Exorcist. He replaced. They were going to do a trilogy from the last Exorcist movie, but that went really badly. So they're like, you know what? We're going to get Mike Flanagan because he's actually like good at what he does. So,
All right. So give me a score.
this is a very hard, again, very hard thing to rate, but I ended up putting it firmly in the middle of at a 5 out of 10, purely because it is exactly as bad as The Room was, but that is also exactly why it is good as it is. So my
Yeah.
rating is not like indicative of its quality or why it succeeds or doesn't succeed. Like it's just such a
So it's
hard
almost like they were going for a 5 out of 10 on purpose.
something like that. Yeah. It's one of those
Yeah.
where like there's no real concrete numerical rating you can possibly give it
Mhm.
because it's trying to be something so specific and
Yeah.
something that is so inherently paradoxical in that like it does not work in any way but also works in every way,
Yeah.
which is why
Okay.
I leaned with the 5 out of 10 because that is perfectly in the middle, which is as close as you can get in terms of something this unbelievably paradoxical.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like an interesting one.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely worth the watch. It was hysterical.
All right. I'm interested in the next one we're going to go. La La Land.
This is the
I
first
know this
time
has
I,
been around a while, but classic.
yeah, and a modern classic. It returned to theaters a couple of weeks ago for its 10th anniversary, and this was the first time I'd gotten the chance to see it. Um,
You saw it in the theater?
yeah, my main interest in it came from the cinematographer attached to the film, Linus Sandgren, who I'd seen a couple other movies he'd worked on. He shot No Time to Die, which I really liked his work on. He did the cinematography for Wuthering Heights, which was not a very good movie, but he was working crazy time for a script that didn't deserve it. And he's now attached to replace Greg Fraser as cinematographer on Dune Part 3. So I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure he won an Oscar for the don't quote me on that, but uh
Yep. What do
we're
you think
gonna
of the cinematographer?
we're gonna
Uh,
start with him because this man
yeah,
is colors.
it's
Oh
crazy,
my
right?
God. He is absolutely immaculate. There were some subtle camera movements that he did that like legitimately caught me off guard. there's everyone knows the iconic scene that's on like the poster with Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling like dancing on that hill.
Yep.
But there was a very subtle kind, not subtle, but there was a sequence during that scene where where the way they were moving was in like a weird zigzaggy line. And it wasn't like the camera was moving like crazy far or crazy fast, but the way he was sort of tracking, they were sort of tracking them with the camera in that zigzaggy line without losing focus and
Yeah.
without drifting too far to the left or too far to the right. Like they
Mhm.
were able to move it in a way that, despite the speed the actors were moving at, they kept it perfectly centered. And that was like mind blowing to me.
I don't remember that. 'Cause I kind of remember feeling like when they were dancing, you must felt like you were dancing with them or something.
The camera was very much trying to, they were very much trying to evoke that with the camera. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The way it moves with them.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. All right. And then, of course, so tell me about this director. I don't know him. Damien.
Damien Chazelle, he is done several movies that have been like critically acclaimed. He did Whiplash, which was a huge deal. That was his debut feature, I believe, that had Miles Teller, J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons was in this too, a small role, but he was there. And he did one called Babylon a couple years ago, which was a humongous sort of scale movie about like 1920s Hollywood and had a huge cast, like that was led by I think Margot Robbie.
Oh,
And
I remember that one. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
one
yeah.
I think was fairly controversial, but the people who love it are like diehard ride or die defenders.
Hmm.
Um, but this
Yeah.
was this was
Okay,
what
I
he
kind of
wanted.
remember that. Is this, you think this is his best movie?
This is
La
the
La
only
Land?
movie of his I've seen, so by default, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
He wanted, I did a little research. He wanted this to be his debut feature originally, but he didn't have the budget to do something of this scale, so he did Whiplash first.
Hmm.
And after Whiplash was such a heavy like awards hitter in 2014, he got the budget to do this, and I think his cast switched up on him pretty close to starting shooting. I don't remember who was originally supposed to play Ryan Gosling's role, but I think Emma Watson was originally supposed to be Emma Stone's character. And
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure they switched them up I think it might have been Miles Teller again, but I'm not sure. But I
Oh,
think
okay.
the casting here worked out well in their favor with Gosling and Stone, who Stone delivers a career best performance here, and Ryan Gosling delivers a runner up to his career best performance. I still think Blade Runner 2049 is his best, but this is a very close second.
Yeah, they both did good. I mean, it really put them on the map, I would say as well.
I mean, Gosling and they were both already decently big. I mean, Emma Stone had already been in two Spider-Man movies by that point, and
Yeah, that's true.
but
I feel like definitely escalated their careers though,
yeah,
in some way, you know.
this was such an I
What
when I
did you like about their performances the best?
was just sort of the realism of it. Like both of them, despite the larger than life musical scale of it, they managed to ground themselves in reality. And I think that's partly because of Chazelle's sort of basic pitch for the movie. I read a decent amount about the development process, and supposedly his sort of idea for this film was basically a 1950s style musical, but with with a touch of like the realist sort of mindset of sometimes things don't always work out in terms of like romance and their relationship, which honestly,
Yeah, I could see that. It looked like a 1950s musical with the coloring and
yeah,
whatnot,
they
but
used the
it
very
was more contemporary concepts.
yeah, it felt very like Technicolor in the way it was shot.
Hmm.
And even the way they sort of opened the movie, like they had the title card with the like copyright label at the bottom, which they don't normally do in modern pictures.
Hmm.
So it very much has the aesthetic that he's going for, whilst still being set in a more modern time.
Yep. Okay. Anything you didn't like, or all good?
No, this is quite possibly like something I genuinely have no notes on. It was just such a mesmerizing sort of experience. But I also love sort of, again, with that things don't work out. I love how they approach that with their relationship, with them sort of drifting apart, but still leaving a positive impact on each other. where it's
Hmm.
like their dream, they have these dreams, and as times become more harder for them, they start to drift away from those dreams. But then they push each other to follow those dreams. They lift each other up. They lift each other up and give them that sort of motivational boost to follow their dreams. And even though their relationship doesn't work out, they manage to follow those dreams. And the ending is like devastating at the very end of the movie because she's an aspiring actress, Mia's, and Sebastian Gosling's character is a jazz musician who dreams of opening his own club. And at the very end of the movie, it's like 5 years later, you see that she's now a successful like movie star with, and she's married and has a kid, and her and her husband go out for a night and they get lost on the there. There's traffic, so they go off an exit and they just go find a random club, and they walk into this random jazz club, and she sees the logos that she had designed for his club 5 years ago, and you see him play and you see him see her, and there's a montage of them imagining what their life would have been like had it worked out. And like the final sequence before the credits roll is the two of them looking at each other, and it's like a bittersweet ending where like they silently acknowledge each other and sort of there's no word
Well, yeah, it's sometimes you have to appreciate people in your life, even if it doesn't work out the way you
yeah,
thought,
yeah, that last moment where they again they don't acknowledge any words, you just see them silently acknowledge each other with a little smile. It's very bittersweet, but
Yeah.
after the whole movie shows their ups and downs, both in their relationships and in their own aspirations, it hits like a truck.
Yeah.
Like it demolishes you emotionally.
Well, it is interesting to think about people in your life that, yeah, wasn't meant to be long term, but moved you forward in some way, But yeah,
Yeah.
it happens.
And I think that's what makes it so sort of powerful and just sort of mature, where it's able to deal
That
with
is mature because a
where
lot
they,
of people, when they split up or they don't work out, they get all pissed off at each other and, don't appreciate what they had.
yeah. And in a lot of musicals like this, they always go for the happy ending where they get together and it's happily ever after. And I sort of, again, going back to his pitch of the 50s style musical with that approach,
Hmm.
made for an incredibly sort of gripping and compelling story.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well, it's a good one. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, it's good. All right, let's keep going.
yeah. Oh, I'm not trying to scroll down on my notes and almost
This
flip.
one is curious because animation here. Coyote versus Acme. I didn't even realize this was out.
Not even with technically it's not out. It doesn't come out till Friday. I just went to an early access screening with
Okay,
early
got it.
access
Okay.
screen. They held some public early access screenings
Hmm.
yesterday, so I went to one of those with my father. Uh,
Gotcha, gotcha. All right. So this is Looney Tunes.
this
Classic.
this movie is an interesting one because its very existence is sort of an underdog story. So I'm gonna go just a little bit into sort of how this movie almost didn't exist.
Okay.
In roughly, this film had been in development since around 2018, and it was shot maybe in 2021, 22. It was
Okay.
almost entirely completed, but Warner Bros., who were not in the best financial spot because their cash cows, DC and Harry Potter, were flopping left and right, decided that they were going to shelve a bunch of movies that were fully finished for tax write-offs. Among them were the there was a Batgirl movie that they shelved. There were two Looney Tunes movies that were shelved. This one, the most notable of them, because this was originally slated for a 2023 release, as well as a fully 2D animated Looney Tunes film called The Day the Earth Blew Up. Sometime in 2024, a small company called Ketchup Entertainment bought the distribution rights to release The Day the Earth Blew Up, which they released in theaters last year in, I think, March. And after a viral fan campaign, they would go on to buy the distribution rights for Coyote versus Acme as well.
Huh.
And after years of thinking it might never actually come out, here it is.
Wow. Meaning, so when you mean it was already like Will Forte who was in it, he had already done all of his acting. It was all ready to go.
The entire movie was shot, and I'm pretty
Oh,
sure a decent amount of it was already edited. Like there were like official promotional screenshots out there already that were scenes from the finished film
Hmm.
that were already out there.
I wonder if they, because of COVID, I mean, the movie industry was so weird for a couple of years.
Yeah, and
And it wasn't really till, you know, I don't know, what was the, I don't know, a couple of movies started to bring it back, but like little movies like this, they didn't do that well in theaters for a while.
Warner Bros. In particular, during 2021, for all intents and purposes, they shot themselves in the foot, where they would release every single new film of theirs simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
Nobody was going out to the theater
yeah.
when every movie they released was available digitally, and that ended up affecting like Mortal Kombat, the first one, or Dune Part One was one of the ones that they had done that way, which Denis Villeneuve was not happy about either. So
Yeah, well, there weren't too many people happy about it, but yeah.
yeah, they shot themselves in the foot, and then afterwards they realized they needed to make money somehow, and they were going to cut costs by shelving these movies that were already finished.
Yeah, well, I guess if you don't have anybody watching on digital, putting in a theater that nobody can go to doesn't help either. So yeah.
Yeah,
All right, well, it finally came out. So and so Wile E. Coyote's the main character.
yeah, the whole premise, and I think the premise is inherently like very clever, just in concept. His whole premise is we all know Wile E. Coyote and his endless, never-ending pursuit of the Roadrunner, which never actually ends because he never actually catches him.
Hmm.
Um, but every single machine or wacky invention he uses to try and catch him, it always backfires. It always ends up
Yeah,
hurting him, and the Roadrunner keeps going. But he's sort of every one of those inventions is designed by the Acme Corporation, who are often depicted as the big overarching villains for the Looney Tunes.
yep,
So this movie is he gets tired of these things just not working. Like the beginning of the movie is just another like classic Coyote and Roadrunner short in the more 3D style
yeah.
of him chasing the Roadrunner and him using wacky inventions and said wacky inventions backfiring spectacularly
I can't not laugh just thinking about it.
and him inevitably falling off cliffs and blowing himself up. You know,
And
just
getting an anvil fall on his head.
their usual antics.
Yeah.
But and I will before I get further into the plot, I do actually really like how they blended the animation style with the live action because it still feels very Looney Tunes. Like even though it's 3D, they sort of still captured the style of the old shorts
Hmm.
in a way that makes it still blend well into this live action world whilst also retaining its style and charm. But the whole premise is after that whole thing goes like wrong, he goes back to his cave and looks over all of his schemes and sees the piles and piles of all the Acme products that failed him, and then he sees an ad for this lawyer who specializes in recalled Acme products, and he's a personal injury lawyer who helps tunes who were hurt by malfunctioning rocket boots, and he realizes at looking at all of his machines that they're all from the same company.
Yeah.
So he goes to the lawyer, that's Will Forte's character, the lawyer, um, and he proposes the case, and he initially shows him the rocket boots, and Will Forte is just like, okay, so we're gonna get a recall and we're gonna settle this, and you'll get like $100 for it. And Wiley is A, not sold, and B, not done with his example as he takes him outside and opens his tiny bag that has a cartoonish amount of things inside of it.
Yeah.
He just dumps every single invention he's ever used and starts demonstrating how they backfire. And you just see Will Forte genuinely just like, no, we can't do this because the thing about the Acme Corporation, which we later learn the CEO of the Acme Corporation is none other than Foghorn Leghorn himself. Um, but
Nice.
but we soon learn that Acme is sort of a monopoly for like all cartoon related products. Like they are basically unstoppable. Nobody has ever gone up against them in court and lost, especially with their lawyer Buddy Crane, played hysterically by John Cena. Um,
Hmm.
and sort of the whole gimmick is they realize pretty early on that if they're going to do this, because the lawyer Will Forte, he tries to just settle the case and just be done with it, but when asked to sign it, Wile E. Coyote decides that instead of signing it, he just tears up the paper, and John Cena crashes out and it goes to local court, and they realize that they can't go anywhere without a witness, and they realize the only witness they can use to testify is the Roadrunner. So they keep trying to set up traps or try to catch the Roadrunner or get him to agree to come to court, and they obviously continuously fail, as one does when it comes to catching the Roadrunner. So they end up going to court and they have no argument. And Wile E. Coyote is very interested in just blowing up the courtroom because he thinks it'd actually just be easier that way. But we all know because he's just kind of a lunatic. But
Yeah.
we also learn pretty early, like they find out there's a big conspiracy with Acme involving the tunes, and there was a cartoon scientist who worked for Acme because he wanted to develop products to make cartoon characters' lives easier. But soon he learned about a despicable conspiracy called Project Sisyphus that got him basically banished to the Shadow Realm for 30 years, while Acme continued to sort of the big reveal is that they meet with their sort of sleeper agent who's been feeding them anonymous information, their sleeper agent who is in fact none other than Bugs Bunny.
Of course.
Um, well, first he sends them to go find information from Daffy Duck, who was one of Acme's old test subjects and has since gone completely insane. But
Hmm.
they get their information and sort of figure out what happened, the extent of what happened, and sort of they end up making such a successful deal out of the case that sort of it ends up getting national attention. And sort of the climax of the movie is Will Forte finds out that Wiley's entire sort of plan is not actually to um sue the Acme Corporation, but he specifically wants to get the Roadrunner as a witness so he can trap him and finally eat him. And there's a whole falling out between the two of them, and they actually managed to do a surprisingly kind of emotional climax where they're in DC and no one has come to testify, and Wiley shows up late because of their whole falling out, where he's like, "You lied to me," and but Will Forte also lied to Wiley to get him to come to DC with him by promising the Roadrunner would be there, and he gets there, and then Will Forte realizes he was wrong and makes a whole rousing speech about how dedicated Wiley is to his cause and how hard he works, even though he always fails. And there's this whole big moment where Wiley shows up to court late and he's all moved by this performance. And they fight to the death against in this sort of court case. And Elmer Fudd is a senator, apparently. But they end up managing to expose the conspiracy, not enough to get sort of a investigation or anything, but they managed they finally get their witness. They finally sent in a message to the Roadrunner, and he showed up. He showed up, and there's a whole scene where Will Forte is like asking him questions on the court floor, and he's like, "I'm going to ask you a series of yes or no questions. One for yes, say two beeps. For no, just say one." So they have him entirely, they translate their entire thing, but they end up finding a fairly sort of emotional climax where where Will Forte asks the Roadrunner, he's like, "Do you consider Wiley Coyote your friend a friend?" And he does the two beeps, and you see Wiley start tearing up. And Wiley has also set a Rube Goldberg style trap in the courtroom specifically for the Roadrunner. But the Roadrunner then he has his last sort of confession, his last sort of statement, and they translate it. And the last thing he says is to Wiley, he's like, "Are you coming home?" Because he's been away for so long.
Hmm.
He misses his friend, and it's like it's enough to get to Wiley. And Then they end up losing the case because it's not enough evidence, and Acme wins again because they're above the law. And then Will Forte basically just tell Wiley, they're like, "You've got nothing left to lose. Have fun." And they set off the trap and end up catching um, John Cena and Foghorn Leghorn in the trap.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's actually kind of interesting the way they sort of handle the climax. The idea of a mega corporation having so much money that they're basically just able to do the most like inhumane things behind the scenes and be above the law. Because the thing is,
Well, it feels like there might be some companies like that,
yeah,
right now.
yeah, because the thing is that like the things they were doing is they were straight up deliberately sending out these faulty products and using cartoons as test subjects for them
Mhm.
to sort of use them to incorporate into developing products meant for humans. So they were basically using them as test subjects.
Well, I
And
assume cartoon characters don't have a lot of legal rights, so
yeah, they're also incredibly durable, which Foghorn Leghorn argues. They actually get him to confess to it in the court because of his own ego. His ego is so big that he confesses to it and then tries to explain why it's right, and they still win the case. But this little tiny law firm that's sort of cowardly from the middle of like New Mexico becomes like the legal sort of courtroom,
mm,
the law firm for cartoons. Because after the whole performance there, all the other cartoons start coming and start to sue Acme. So it starts a whole chain of events that finally gets them publicly exposed for their crimes, and Cena and Leghorn are both arrested.
nice.
And it's like this is both A,
Well,
hysterically funny, and B, extremely timely and kind of impactful.
it seems like a pretty well put together movie considering all that.
Yeah.
Not what you would expect from a Coyote Acme movie.
No, but and it still had your typical Looney Tunes like cartoonish antics. Like
Yeah,
I was watching with my father, who's like a diehard Looney Tunes fan, and he was cracking up the entire time. There was
yeah.
a guy off to the side in our theater that was actually really funny. This guy, he was cackling like a freaking witch. It was the funniest thing. He was just cracking up at everything. It was hysterical.
I might have to go see this.
Yeah, the wide
I'm
release.
trying to decide if my 6-year-old would be interested or not, but
I think she'd find it funny. This is the kind of humor kids need these days, where it's not afraid to be a little just cartoonish and over the top. It's not just silly fart jokes.
classic. But I don't think enough kids know who Wile E. Coyote is anymore.
Yeah, well, that's why we gotta fix the future by showing them the classics and showing them the classics still work when done creatively.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
So
this is a creative premise that has that classic Looney Tunes humor whilst also doing something a little different with the IP, and it
yeah, I
manages
like
to
it.
sort of do everything right. You know, it's
Yeah, do you got a score for me?
I give it a solid 9 out of 10.
It's pretty
I
good.
I kind of figured it was going to be pretty solid, but I didn't think it was going to be. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I ended up liking
It
it.
all comes down to the story and being true to the characters.
Yeah, and it sort of blended everything because I know humor is also subjective, but a lot of more kids movies or family friendly movies these days tend to have fairly sort of generic and sort of irritating humor. But like the
Mhm.
old school, like Looney Tunes, like slapstick style humor, I feel it just has aged wonderfully because it just never gets old. Like
Yeah,
Wile
most
E.
of them.
Coyote exploding and all his fur like burning off, and he's got the little spark of fire on his head while he looks awkwardly into the camera is like the funniest thing ever. And his communication, he is the way they do him because he is completely a nonverbal character. So everything
Right.
they have to do with him, expression wise, is all through body language and facial expressions. And he is so expressive. And that's sort of, I think, a thing that the Looney Tunes have always done so well, or just like these old school cartoon characters, is they were always so expressive. They can convey so much without a single word.
Yeah. I will say as well, Will Forte, he could be good, but he's like very particular. I think I could see him being really good in this movie, just because I don't know. He feels like over the top, but he's so funny.
Yeah, and this is sort of funny because he's here his whole character is he's a pathetic sort of lawyer in the middle of nowhere who went to Harvard but didn't amount to anything and ended up being a little personal injury lawyer in like
Yeah.
Nebraska or sorry, New
But I can see him
Mexico.
taking it really, really seriously too. And just
He actually takes it decently seriously, which is, I think, fun. I think it
he
ends up
almost
making it so fun because he plays it dead seriously, and you fully buy into the dynamic between him and Wiley.
I feel like he's a Wile E. Coyote kind of character in the real world somehow.
It's a good way to put it. He definitely
Mhm.
fits. He fits in this really well. John
Yeah.
Cena is actually really funny too. There's a couple scenes where after they kidnapped or sent that scientist to the Shadow Realm, that scientist was one of the owners of Tweety Bird. He was the granny's like husband who went missing, and the Acme starts using Tweety as a mercenary against his will, which is really funny. And there's a scene where you see because Tweety's obviously got the weird speech impediment, and you see like after they failed to catch the Roadrunner because they tried to kill the Roadrunner so he couldn't testify against
Mhm.
them. To no avail, of course. They ended up destroying half of their cars there, but the Roadrunner got away scotch-free. But
Okay.
there's a whole scene where he's in where the like one of the other mercenaries pulls Tweety out and he's like holding him on his hand, and John Cena's like, "You're my eyes and ears are there. What do you see?" And Tweety's like, "I thought I saw." And he's like, "You thought you saw? I didn't. I don't pay you to think." John Cena goes, "I don't pay you to think you talk. I pay you to talk." John,
That's
John
funny.
Cena is a very cartoonish actor too. He's able to just
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of like
yeah.
just the way he's able to contort his face in these sort of things. Like he has the most cartoonishly goofy and over the top expressions ever.
Mhm.
Like I don't there's very few people who have like faces that cartoon. The only ones I can think of who have like more cartoony faces are like Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Like not many
Well,
people.
I gotta say, I wasn't expecting in our talk today to find out about Coyote and Acme, but yeah, I'm gonna go see this.
Yeah. Again,
Putting it on my list.
wide release is Friday, so
Okay, maybe this weekend then.
and I'm gonna say everyone who's watching, go see this, if anything, just because of the fight it took to save it.
Yeah, no doubt. That's crazy.
Everything it took to get this out of the vault and into the world where it was meant
Into a theater. Yeah.
theater where it was meant to be seen. The funniest thing actually is they had two early access screenings at my AMC. There was one at 1 p.m. yesterday,
Yeah.
but that was the only screening until the day before they added a second screening at 1:20 because the one at 1 o'clock was full and it was in a small auditorium. But they
Huh.
added it at the last second, so I ended up going to the second one because it was less people. But they played the wrong set of trailers before it. Like when they play trailers before a movie, it's always like a comp connected to the movie it's based on.
Yeah.
Like they always aim for the same sort of age rating or sort of like
Mhm.
this is a PG movie, so you would expect mostly like kids movies and family movies being marketed beforehand. But they showed a couple of trailers. There was a horror trailer before it, and there was like a trailer for some like Victorian like erotic thriller comedy that showed about as much as you can show in a trailer without straight up just putting the sex scene there. And I'm
Jeez.
pretty sure some parent or something complained to the staff because when me and my father were walking out, they were giving out these free ticket vouchers for accommodation. They're like, "We played the wrong trailers. We're sorry. Here you go." And I'm like, "You played the wrong trailers? I didn't even notice."
Somehow that makes the movie funnier.
I'm like, you know what? It did not affect or bother me in any way, so it caught me completely off guard. But you know what? I love free stuff. So
Of course. Yeah. All right. What's next on the list to see?
Thursday, I have no class and no work, so I'm going to see Ridley Scott's new movie, The Dog Stars.
Oh,
Scott,
I saw about that. Yeah.
that's got Jacob Elordi, Josh Brolin, Margaret Qualley. I think Guy Pearce is in there too. Don't quote me on that one, though.
Hmm. Okay. That should be pretty good. So,
I've never disliked a Ridley Scott movie before. I've only seen a handful of his, but they've
yeah.
ranged from like
They're
broil
usually pretty entertaining.
yeah, like they've ranged from like classics like Gladiator, Blade Runner, or Alien, which I think is probably the greatest horror movie of all time. Even his
Mhm.
weaker ones, in terms of the ones I've seen, have still been pretty good. The only one I was sort of iffy on was Alien Covenant in 2017, and that's just because it tried to be two different things and didn't fully commit to either of them. But it was
Yeah.
decent enough. Like it wasn't like offensively bad. It was still watchable. So I'm like, I don't really think it's possible for him to make a movie that's bad. Like from what we've seen trailer wise, I don't expect to be like blown out of the water with this one, but like we're gonna
Yeah.
watch
I
it.
think it'd probably be a decent, entertaining movie. So,
Watch it and judge it next week.
sounds good.
Speaking of things that we're going to judge that are coming out this week, Star Wars Zero Company, the video game, releases this week. I don't
Okay.
We're going to talk about it the next week just because I think it's a longer campaign than something like Halo or some of the other games we've talked about recently. So I'm going to need a little more time to get through it. So that'll probably be the following week.
Okay.
Next week, I think, is probably going to end up being pretty light. It's probably just going to be Dog Stars and catching up on, I guess, Lantern, since I forgot to watch this week's episode. But I promise I will watch next week's episode and this week's episode before we record next episode.
All right. Sounds good. Plus, you got class you got to focus on now.
You know,
So,
it's the first week, and I've only got four classes, and only three of them are in person, and only one of them is more than once a week. The other two are only once a week.
all right. So, it
Like,
should be still a light week.
yeah, like today I had one class. It started at 10 and went to 11:15. That was it. Tomorrow I have one class. It's a longer class, but it doesn't start till 5:30 at night. So I've got the entire rest of the day to myself. Then Wednesday is
Well,
the only day. Wednesday I have two class. Wednesday I have the 10 to 11 class again. Then I have another class that's like 12 to 2:45, but it's the first week. I don't think it's going to be that long. And then I've got work from 6 to 9. Then Thursday I've got off, so we're watching the movie. Friday and Saturday I've got work again. And then,
well, enjoy the schedule because, yeah, at some point in life, it doesn't happen that way.
yeah.
All
Uh,
right. Well, I guess with that, we'll end it there. So,
yes, we
yeah,
will.
that's a wrap.
That is a wrap and cut.